The Pregnant Wife's Revenge, a Millionaire's Downfall Warning. This story contains themes of betrayal, public humiliation, and ultimate triumph. Subscribe now and hit the like button if you're ready for a tale of resilience and sweet justice. In a quiet suburban neighborhood just outside Dallas, a woman named Clara walked into the lavish foyer of an upscale hotel suite. Sweat beaded on her forehead, not from the Texas heat, but from the painful shock gripping her soul. She was 7 months pregnant, her body already strained by the life growing within. Yet tonight, instead of celebrating the miracle of new beginnings, she would bear witness to an unthinkable betrayal. Across the room stood her husband, Michael, rose in hand, gazing adoringly into the eyes of another woman. In that moment, Clara realized her world was about to shatter forever. Clara had grown up in a modest home on the outskirts of Dallas. Her parents taught her the value of hard work, empathy, and resilience. She was the eldest of 3 children, often taking on the role of caregiver for her younger siblings. From an early age, Clara believed that love was sacred, a lesson instilled by her mother, who always said true devotion meant being there for someone through life's most painful trials. She carried this idealism into her adult relationships, searching for a partner who would share both burdens and joys with sincerity. Michael, by contrast, was the product of an entirely different world. He was born into a family of wealth and status. As an only child, Michael never lacked material comforts. His parents, entrepreneurs who owned several successful car dealerships, ensured he had the best education and upbringing money could buy. In high school, his friends jokingly called him the Prince, and although he often shrugged off the nickname, a part of him reveled in the attention. When he went on to attend a prestigious private college, he carried that sense of entitlement with him, believing that most things in life were his for the taking. Their paths converged one fortuitous evening at a charity event benefiting Children's Hope Hospital's pediatric unit. Clara had volunteered to help organize the raffle. She was busy handing out tickets when Michael strutted in, wearing a tailored navy suit and exuding confidence. For a moment, she was struck by his polished demeanor and the easy charm with which he greeted everyone. He noticed her too, her kind eyes, the subtle curls of her hair framing her face, and the way she lit up when talking about charitable causes. Intrigued, Michael approached her booth, introduced himself, and asked a few questions about the hospital's fundraising goals. As the night wore on, he found himself drawn to Clara's genuine concern for others. She wasn't dazzled by his wealth or family background. Instead, she engaged him in deep conversation about healthcare reforms, the needs of underprivileged children, and how everyday citizens could foster real change in their communities. When Michael offered to buy more raffle tickets than anyone else, Clara laughed softly, telling him to save his money for future charitable ventures and not to treat giving as a game to be won. Her gentle rebuke kindled a fire within him. He realized she was unlike any woman he had met, grounded, sincere, and uninterested in superficial gestures. By the time the event ended, he was determined not to lose her. He asked for her phone number in the most polite manner he could muster, and Clara, who felt an undeniable spark, graciously gave it to him. Their courtship was fast but intense. Michael showered Clara with thoughtful gifts, but also showed genuine interest in her world. He visited her small apartment, met her siblings, and even helped her mother shop for groceries. Clara, in turn, offered him a refuge from the high-pressure demands of his family's empire. She would listen patiently as he vented about corporate meetings and reminded him of the important things in life: love, connection, and empathy. 4 months into dating, Michael proposed in front of the iconic Dallas skyline, overlooking the glittering city. Clara was stunned. They'd known each other for so short a time, but she felt in her heart that their bond was real and meaningful. With tears of joy streaming down her face, she said yes. The swirl of excitement carried them through an elegant ceremony at the Grand Hyatt Dallas, where Michael's parents spared no expense. Clara's family stood proudly by her side, and for a moment, it all seemed like a fairy tale come to life. Yet underneath the polished veneer of their new marriage, faint red flags waved in the distance. Michael's temper would flare when things didn't go his way, and he had an unsettling tendency to treat his successes, and, by extension, his marriage, as trophies that proved his worth. Clara, ever the optimist, dismissed these warning signs. She believed in the vows they had exchanged, to love, honor, and cherish each other. In her mind, these small imperfections were bumps in the road that love and mutual respect could smooth over. For a time, it did seem like their union was an unbreakable fortress. Their families became interwoven, and Clara grew close to Michael's parents, who began to see her as the grounding influence their son needed. She was welcomed into Dallas's high society gatherings, adjusting to the circles Michael had long navigated. It wasn't the lifestyle she had imagined, but she embraced it because it came with him, her husband, and the father to be of her future children. And though she couldn't yet envision how drastically life would change, she held on to hope that love would guide them both. The cracks began to show, suspicion and concealment. In the early months of their marriage, Clara truly believed she had found her forever partner. Even when she occasionally witnessed Michael's impatience with waitstaff at restaurants, or the way he would scold his subordinates at the family business, she convinced herself that his stress levels were simply too high. She assumed his short temper was a product of the pressure he felt, now that he was being groomed to expand the brand of dealerships nationwide. Still, a tiny voice in the back of her mind whispered that something wasn't quite right. She noticed the first real sign when Michael began coming home far later than usual from work. Previously, if a business meeting or emergency demanded his attention, he'd call or text to let her know he might be late. But in those weeks, he sometimes didn't even bother to inform her, slipping through the door at midnight with vague excuses about last-minute deals and dinner meetings that ran longer than expected. Clara tried to be understanding, but each time she asked for details, Michael would become evasive, changing the subject or brushing off her concerns. Worse yet, Michael's phone suddenly became off-limits. Clara had never been the type to snoop through her partner's devices. She believed wholeheartedly in boundaries and privacy, but his behavior shifted from casually leaving his phone around the house to clutching it as if it were a precious relic. He placed it face down on counters and took it with him, even when he showered. One evening, as they prepared for bed, he received a text. Clara jokingly asked who it was, and the look he gave her, cold, guarded, sent a chill through her body. He mumbled something about work stuff and walked away. The changes in Michael didn't stop there. For years, he had always been enthusiastic about their physical closeness. Suddenly, his passion waned. He avoided nighttime intimacy, claiming exhaustion from his demanding job. Clara tried different approaches, planning a romantic dinner, surprising him with small gifts, or suggesting weekend getaways. Each effort was met with lukewarm acceptance at best. When she gently confronted him about her worries, he dismissed it all as paranoia. He patted her arm and said, "I love you, Clara. You're overthinking," before promptly shifting the conversation to something else. Clara's suspicions escalated when they attended a gala in support of the Dallas Children's Foundation. Michael spent most of the evening at the far end of the ballroom, mingling with business associates. Clara, left to her own devices, floated among acquaintances, making polite chatter. During one of these conversations, She spotted Michael near the champagne fountain, talking to a statuesque blonde in a shimmering red gown. Their body language seemed electric, the woman leaning in, placing a hand lightly on Michael's arm. He didn't recoil. Instead, he let the contact linger in a way that felt intimate. Even from across the room, Clara could sense an undercurrent, something that went beyond casual friendliness. Her heart pounded as she watched them share a quiet laugh. Just as she mustered the courage to approach them, Michael seemed to sense her gaze. He abruptly stepped back from the woman, adopting a more formal pose. Clara tried to brush aside the knot in her stomach, attributing the closeness to the nature of networking events. But doubt took root in her mind that night, refusing to let go. Later, in the car ride home, Clara hesitated for a long moment before asking, "Who was that woman in the red dress you were talking to?" Michael glanced at her, annoyance briefly flashing in his eyes before he forced a calm smile. "That was Olivia Reed," he replied, emphasizing the name as if it should mean something. "She runs a marketing firm my father wants to collaborate with. Nothing more than a business discussion, I assure you." His words felt rehearsed, as though he had anticipated her question. That night, Clara lay awake, staring at the ceiling, unable to quell the uneasy churning in her gut. In the days that followed, she noticed that Olivia's name popped up more frequently. Michael mentioned a lunch meeting with her at a new high-end steakhouse downtown. Then, he supposedly had to attend an urgent pitch presentation at her office. Although none of these individual occurrences proved anything, they collectively chipped away at Clara's sense of security. Every new detail felt like a piece of a puzzle she didn't want to complete, a pregnancy and a painful truth. Soon after, a medical surprise threw yet another wrench into Clara's emotional state. At her annual checkup, ironically scheduled months before she intended to start a family, Clara discovered she was pregnant. Conflicting emotions assaulted her. She was thrilled because motherhood had always been a cherished dream, but the timing seemed precarious. Her marriage was on uncertain ground, and Michael's recent behavior left her worried about how he would react to this life-changing news. She mulled over telling him immediately, but a quiet fear held her back. What if this pregnancy pushed him further away? Or, worse yet, what if his distance confirmed her worst suspicions, that his love and loyalty had already wandered elsewhere? Yet Clara's inherent optimism reasserted itself. She reasoned that a baby might be exactly what would bring them closer. After all, they had spoken so often about raising a family, creating a legacy rooted in love and generosity. Perhaps Michael was simply overwhelmed by his new responsibilities in the family business and the hype of networking in Dallas's competitive scene. She wanted to believe that once he knew about the baby, everything would snap back into place, like a painting that had been knocked askew, but only needed a gentle realignment. Hope is a powerful thing, but it can blind us to truths we don't want to see. Clara clung to that hope, hoping that the secrets Michael guarded so fiercely would dissolve into irrelevance once he heard the news. Little did she know her discovery of pregnancy would collide with an even more shocking revelation, leaving her heart in tatters at the very moment she needed stability and love. Clara agonized over how to share the pregnancy news with Michael. She planned a simple but heartfelt reveal, an intimate dinner at their favorite Italian restaurant, softly lit with candles, with her surprising him at dessert by presenting a tiny pair of baby shoes. In her mind, he would be elated, all tension forgotten. The dream scenario fueled her for days, but the reality, once it arrived, was nothing like the fantasy she had conjured. On the evening she chose for the announcement, Michael didn't come home until nearly 11. He breezed through the door, disheveled and reeking of perfume that wasn't Clara's. "Work ran late," he said by way of greeting, tossing his jacket onto the couch. Clara, who had waited anxiously for hours, felt tears prick the corner of her eyes. She had spent the entire afternoon cooking his favorite dishes, carefully plating them on the dining room table, only for him to ignore the spread. The candles had burned down to puddles of wax, and the baby shoes remained tucked away in her coat pocket. A secret still unspoken. Summoning courage, she gently took his hand. "Michael, I have something really important to tell you," she began. He pulled away from her touch, massaging his temples as though a headache pounded behind his eyes. "Clara, can it wait?" "I'm exhausted," he muttered. Her heart clenched. She had hoped for warmth, a spark of enthusiasm, anything to suggest he cared. In the silence that followed, Clara couldn't hold back anymore. She retrieved the baby shoes from her pocket and held them out, her fingers trembling. "I'm pregnant, Michael," she whispered, her voice quivering with a combination of joy and fear. He stared at the tiny shoes as though they were foreign objects. His eyes flickered with something, shock or possibly even annoyance, before he forced a faint smile. "Wow," he said softly. But there was no genuine excitement. He leaned in to kiss her forehead in what felt like a perfunctory gesture. That's good news, Clara." A strangled mixture of relief and disappointment flooded her. She had yearned for more than this subdued response. Exhausted, she tried to convince herself that maybe he was simply too worn out to process it properly. Over the next few days, however, his behavior didn't improve. In fact, it worsened. He spent even more time away, claiming work emergencies at all hours. One Friday afternoon, Clara received a call from Michael's mother, Eleanor. They had always been on warm terms. Eleanor was a formidable woman, confident, sharp, and deeply invested in her son's life. She congratulated Clara on the pregnancy in a formal, practiced tone. Then she mentioned something that made Clara's stomach lurch. "I just hope everything works out, dear. I know Michael's been very busy with that new marketing collaboration. I've heard he's been working closely with Olivia Reed, perhaps too closely, if the rumors are to be believed." Hanging up the phone, Clara felt a chill seep into her bones. Rumors. She wanted to ignore them, but the pieces were beginning to fit together. The late nights, the secretive phone calls, the sudden appearance of Olivia Reed in nearly every conversation about work. It all pointed to an affair. A wave of nausea took hold of her, and she rushed to the bathroom, retching not just from pregnancy sickness, but from the mounting dread in her heart. That same evening, she mustered the courage to confront Michael directly. When he finally came home, hours after dinner had gone cold, she stood in front of him in the living room, blocking his path. "I need you to be honest with me," she said, her voice unsteady yet resolute. "Are you having an affair with Olivia Reed?" For a fleeting second, guilt flashed in his eyes. Then his face hardened into a mask of indignation. "You're being ridiculous," he snapped. "She's a professional contact. You know my father has big plans for the business expansion, and I have to work closely with marketing experts. Why would you even ask such a thing?" Clara refused to back down. She stood her ground. "Because you're never home anymore. Because your phone is always hidden away. Because you smell like someone else's perfume. Because your own mother alluded to rumors." She took a shaky breath, tears glistening in her eyes. "Michael, I'm pregnant with your child. If there's something going on, I deserve to know." Michael's jaw tightened, and he let out a sharp exhale. For a moment, Clara thought he might come clean. Instead, he turned the tables. "You think being pregnant gives you the right to interrogate me like this? You're stressed, and you're overreacting. I've told you it's work." The anger in his voice cut through her, and she saw not a trace of empathy or reassurance. He brushed past her and strode into the bedroom, leaving Clara standing alone, tears rolling down her cheeks. The public betrayal, a gala of humiliation over the next few weeks, The chasm between them widened to a yawning gulf. Clara silently wrestled with her suspicions, noticing every subtle detail. Michael's phone buzzing late at night, the hushed conversations he had when she left the room, and the repeated mention of marketing plans that required Olivia's expert input. Clara felt sick with worry for herself and the life growing inside her. She still held on to a slim hope that maybe she was mistaken, or that if Michael was straying, he might confess and try to fix things. Then, one Saturday afternoon, Clara made a decision she never imagined she'd resort to. She followed him. He had left home in casual attire, saying he had to meet with a client. Clara got into her own car a few minutes later, adrenaline coursing through her veins. She trailed him through Dallas traffic to an upscale condominium complex near the Arts District, trying to stay inconspicuous. She parked a short distance away and watched as he entered the building. About 15 minutes later, she saw him step out onto a fifth-floor balcony alongside Olivia. Their body language was impossible to misread. He wrapped his arms around her waist, drawing her close. She laughed, leaning her head on his chest, her hand resting over his heart. The sight hammered the final nail into Clara's hopes. She snapped a few photos with her phone, tears blurring her vision, her heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her ears. She felt an odd mixture of heartbreak, rage, and relief. Heartbreak that her marriage was crumbling, rage that he would betray her while she carried his child, and relief that she now had irrefutable proof. No more second-guessing, no more illusions. The truth was laid bare. Michael was unfaithful, and Olivia was the other woman. Clara sped away, her mind reeling, sobs choking her throat, though she wanted answers. She couldn't confront him at that moment. Her heartbreak was too raw. Later, in the quiet emptiness of their home, she gazed at the photos on her phone, realizing that everything was about to change. Her life's foundation was collapsing, but she told herself she had to remain strong, if not for her own sake, then for the child growing inside her. The next confrontation she had with Michael would be definitive. There was no turning back from the revelations that would soon rock both their worlds. Days passed, filled with an uneasy calm in the house. Clara waited for the right moment to confront Michael with the photographic evidence. She sensed he was on edge too, as if he sensed the tension brewing beneath her silence. Then, one evening, he informed her, without a shred of apology, that he needed her to accompany him to an important business function at a private estate on the outskirts of Dallas. The idea of walking into a room where Olivia might be present made Clara's stomach turn. But something in Michael's tone felt forcibly insistent, almost threatening. Gathering her courage, she agreed, knowing she had her own plan. She wanted the truth laid bare, and perhaps a confrontation in a public setting would prevent Michael from resorting to gaslighting or outright denial. The event was scheduled for the weekend, giving Clara enough time to steel herself mentally. Yet she could never have predicted just how far Michael would go to humiliate her. The estate was a grand mansion, owned by one of Michael's business associates. Clara arrived on his arm, her heart pounding. She wore a flowing gown that accommodated her growing pregnancy bump. In the glittering lights of the chandeliered foyer, she spotted familiar faces from Dallas's high society, along with a cluster of younger executives she didn't recognize. And then there was Olivia, radiant in a silver cocktail dress that clung to her every curve. She stood near the bar, sipping champagne, her eyes immediately locking onto Michael. Clara's pulse quickened with anger. At first, the evening proceeded as any formal gathering might. Polite conversation, a lavish buffet, and instrumental music playing in the background. But Clara could sense something was off. The energy in the room felt charged with anticipation, as if everyone knew a secret she didn't. She noticed how a few guests gave her sympathetic glances, quickly looking away. It felt like the ground was shifting beneath her. Then, at the stroke of 9, a hush fell over the crowd as Michael stepped to the center of the room, with Olivia at his side. Clara stood at a distance, her chest tightening with each step he took. Clutching a microphone, Michael cleared his throat. "I'd like everyone's attention, please," he began. His eyes flickered toward Clara for the briefest moment, but his expression was unreadable. "As many of you know," he continued, "I've been working on expanding my family's business into new markets. I've had the privilege of collaborating with one of the brightest marketing minds in the industry." He paused, gazing at Olivia with a fondness that made Clara's stomach lurch. "Olivia Reed has not only brought innovative strategies to the table, but she's also become someone I cherish on a personal level." A ripple of whispers ran through the crowd, but no one stepped forward to stop him. Clara stood rooted in place, shock freezing her movements. Her heart hammered so fiercely, she wondered if she might faint. Then, to her horror, Michael retrieved a small velvet box from his jacket pocket and knelt on one knee in front of Olivia. "Olivia," he said, his voice reverberating through the stunned silence. "Will you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" For a moment, Clara couldn't breathe. Her chest constricted as though iron bands tightened around her ribs. She was witnessing her husband, the father of her unborn child, publicly proposing to another woman. Guests gasped, a flurry of shocked exclamations filling the air. Olivia lifted a hand to her mouth in a theatrical display of surprise, feigning a moment of indecision before exclaiming, "Yes, Michael, of course I'll marry you." The crowd erupted into applause, though a significant portion of onlookers appeared uneasy. Clara felt tears scorching her cheeks, but she was determined not to crumble. The baby in her womb kicked, as if sensing the turmoil raging through her. For a split second, Clara thought she might collapse under the weight of devastation, but a fierce anger welled up, holding her upright. She forced her way through the crowd, which parted for her like a bow wave slicing the sea. Michael and Olivia turned to face her, their expressions shifting from triumph to something akin to alarm. Before either could speak, Clara raised her voice, her words slicing through the gathered throng. "Michael," she began, her tone trembling with a mix of rage and heartbreak. "What do you think you're doing? I'm your wife, and I'm carrying your child. How dare you propose to another woman in front of me?" A hush fell once more. People exchanged glances, their faces reflecting horror, pity, and in some cases, morbid curiosity. Michael stood, his demeanor shifting to cold defensiveness. "We're over, Clara," he said flatly. "You just refuse to accept it. Olivia and I are moving forward with our life together. I needed to make it official. Everyone here deserves to know the truth." Olivia slipped her arm around Michael's waist, her new engagement ring gleaming under the chandelier. Clara could only stare, feeling as though the world had spun off its axis. "You coward," she whispered, her voice cracking. "You couldn't even tell me to my face. You had to drag me here to humiliate me." Michael shrugged, a hollow arrogance in his eyes. "I don't owe you anything anymore," he spat. "Sign the divorce papers when they're served. Stop clinging to something that's been dead for a long time." In that moment, Clara realized the scale of his cruelty. He wanted to not just discard her, but to break her spirit in the process. Yet she found a spark of strength in the depths of her despair. Lifting her chin, she took a steadying breath. "I will never forget this," she murmured, her voice carrying a solemn promise. "You've shown your true colors to the entire world tonight. I hope you both get what you deserve." With that, Clara turned on her heel and left the estate, tears streaming down her face. The crowd parted silently, some guests reaching out to touch her shoulder in a futile show of consolation. The doors slammed shut behind her, and her world felt irrevocably changed. As she climbed into a waiting taxi, her phone buzzing with calls and texts she ignored, Clara knew she was at the lowest point of her life. She placed a protective hand over her belly. She might have lost a husband, but she still had a child to protect, and perhaps, in the future, a reckoning to deliver. Rebuilding, a mother's resolve. In the days following that disastrous night, Clara's grief was all-consuming. She locked herself inside the master bedroom, the same space where she and Michael had once whispered dreams about the future. Now, it felt haunted by a specter of broken promises. She curled up on the bed, the duvet pulled to her chin, replaying Michael's proposal to Olivia in her mind, like a sickening loop she couldn't escape. Her phone continued to buzz with calls from concerned friends, acquaintances, and even nosy busybodies from Michael's social circle. With each notification, Clara felt like she was being dragged back into that humiliating moment in the mansion. She ignored most of the calls, though she eventually mustered the courage to speak with her younger sister, Mia. Soft-spoken but fiercely protective, Mia offered unwavering support. "We'll get through this, Clara," she promised. "You're strong. You have the baby to think about. Don't let that scumbag's actions define your future." Despite the encouraging words, Clara found the simplest tasks daunting. She had trouble eating, her appetite stifled by the heartbreak lodged in her throat. Sleep offered little respite, as nightmares of Michael and Olivia's public display jolted her awake each night. Worst of all, her emotions were magnified by pregnancy hormones, creating a swirling storm of sadness, anger, betrayal, and fear for the future. Amid the swirl of despair, official paperwork arrived, divorce documents delivered in a crisp envelope with Michael's attorney's letterhead. The finality of it made Clara's hands shake as she opened the package. Michael was moving swiftly. He wanted to dissolve their marriage, dividing assets with the cold precision of a business deal. Enclosed was an offer for a monthly stipend, until such time as their child reached adulthood, a calculated sum that reeked of hush money. The subtext was clear: take the settlement and disappear from his life quietly. Clara bristled at the notion of letting him buy her silence, yet practical concerns weighed heavily on her mind. She needed financial stability, especially now that she was carrying a child. Her job, a humble administrative position in a local nonprofit, provided steady but modest income. The cost of raising a child alone in Dallas was daunting. For a few agonizing days, she wavered, tempted to sign just to ensure her baby's future was secure. But each time she lifted a pen to the dotted line, she thought about that humiliating moment when Michael proposed to Olivia right in front of her. She remembered the baby's protective flutter in her womb, as if her unborn child was urging her to stand strong. Clara set the paperwork aside, deciding she would consult a lawyer first. During that turbulent period, she received a surprising invitation from none other than Eleanor, Michael's mother. Though Clara initially hesitated, surely Eleanor would take her son's side, she agreed to meet. Sensing a glimmer of compassion in the older woman's voice, they arranged to meet at a quiet cafe in downtown Dallas. Upon arriving, Eleanor looked strained and older than Clara remembered, her expensive jewelry doing little to hide the distress etched across her face. "Clara," Eleanor said softly, reaching across the table to squeeze her hand. "I'm so sorry for what Michael has done. I never raised him to behave this way." Tears glistened in her eyes, and Clara felt her own well up in response. "I want you to know you'll always be family to me, and I'm here if you need anything." Despite her pain, Clara was touched by the gesture. She didn't know how genuine it was. Perhaps Eleanor was attempting damage control. Still, she felt a flicker of relief that at least someone acknowledged the cruelty she had endured. "Thank you," Clara whispered. "I appreciate your kindness. Even though I'm not sure where we stand now, I don't want to cause problems." Eleanor nodded solemnly. "I understand, but please keep me informed about the baby. I want to be part of my grandchild's life no matter what. And if you need a good attorney, I can recommend one who isn't tied to the family, someone who will protect your interests." The meeting ended with a hug, and Eleanor slipping Clara a business card with the name of a reputable divorce lawyer. Clara walked away with mixed feelings. On one hand, she felt some solace in Eleanor's support. On the other, she couldn't shake the question. Why hadn't Eleanor intervened sooner? Returning to her empty home, Clara took a long look in the mirror. Her reflection showed tear-stained cheeks, dark circles under her eyes, and the gentle curve of her pregnant belly. In that moment, she made a decision. She would not allow the humiliation to define her or her unborn child's life. Though the path ahead looked arduous, she clung to the determination to emerge from this ordeal stronger. She picked up her phone, scrolling past the gossip-laden voicemails until she found the business card's number. With a steady breath, she dialed the lawyer, mentally preparing for a new battle. For her and her child, she would fight. Perhaps, in time, she might even find a way to transform this devastation into a source of resilience. A new chapter, career and motherhood. Clara's first meeting with attorney Sarah Hayes marked a pivotal moment in her fight for independence. Sarah was a sharp-tongued woman with salt and pepper hair, dressed in a no-nonsense black blazer. Her eyes conveyed both intelligence and empathy, and Clara felt a sense of relief settling in as they discussed the complexities of the divorce case. What Michael did is not just emotionally devastating, it's legally reprehensible, Sarah stated calmly as she paged through the documents Clara had brought. Publicly proposing to someone else while still married? Even if Texas laws for fault divorce aren't as punitive as in some states, it still paints a compelling picture of his wrongdoing, and that can work to our advantage. A tiny spark of hope ignited in Clara. She had dreaded an uphill legal battle, imagining Michael's high-priced lawyers steamrolling her, but Sarah's confidence gave her courage. Over the course of an hour, they mapped out a strategy that included fighting for fair child support, custody arrangements, and possibly even compensation for the emotional distress. Sarah made it clear that Clara's reluctance to sign Michael's hush-money settlement was a wise decision. Accepting it without negotiation might have locked her into a less favorable position. Beyond the legal realm, Clara began to focus on her emotional and financial stability. She realized that the job at the non-profit, while rewarding, might not be enough to sustain her and her child in the long run. Swallowing her pride, she updated her resume and began applying for positions at larger organizations, hoping to find a role that offered better benefits and a more substantial salary. The process wasn't quick or easy. She sent out dozens of applications, attended interviews that sometimes went nowhere, and juggled bouts of morning sickness in between. During this phase, she sought refuge in her sister Mia's support. Mia often came over to cook healthy meals, ensuring Clara was getting the right nutrition for the pregnancy. She also accompanied Clara to doctor's appointments at Children's Hope Hospital, where Clara felt reassured each time she heard her baby's heartbeat on the ultrasound. She discovered small moments of joy, like finding out she was expecting a little girl. That milestone brought tears to her eyes, reminding her that in the midst of darkness, there was a precious ray of light. As her belly grew, so did her resolve. She confided in a close friend, Lisa, who worked at a startup tech company in Dallas. Through this connection, Clara landed an interview for an administrative manager position. The job was a significant step up from her previous role, offering a flexible schedule and robust maternity benefits. The interviewer was frank about the challenges of the role: tight deadlines, multitasking between different departments, but Clara embraced the possibility of forging a new path. She left the interview feeling cautiously optimistic. Within a week, the company extended a formal job offer. Clara accepted, her heart pounding with excitement and relief. Although anxiety still loomed, moving to a new job while pregnant was a brave leap. She sensed that forging ahead was her only option. On her first day, she discovered a supportive work culture. Her boss, a mother of two, expressed understanding for her situation and even provided her with resources on balancing pregnancy with a demanding workload. Meanwhile, the divorce proceedings began in earnest. Sarah filed papers citing Michael's extramarital affair as grounds. Michael's attorneys responded with the expected bluster and denial, trying to shift blame onto Clara for failing to maintain the marital relationship. They argued that she was emotionally distant and uncompromising, attempting to paint Michael as a victim of a loveless marriage. In these legal skirmishes, Clara felt her anger well up. But each time she reviewed a misleading statement from Michael's side, she channeled that fury into motivation. Motivation to fight harder, to not back down. Every day seemed like a balancing act, juggling the new job, attending prenatal checkups, and steeling herself for the unrelenting divorce battle. But despite the challenges, Clara felt an ember of strength glowing in her heart. With each passing week, she noticed a subtle shift in her mindset. She wasn't just surviving, she was laying the groundwork for a comeback. In the background, word of Michael's public betrayal and abrupt engagement to Olivia traveled swiftly through Dallas's social circles. Some of Michael's old friends quietly reached out to Clara, expressing sympathy. Others distanced themselves from the drama, wanting to remain neutral. Clara learned to filter her social media accounts, blocking negativity and focusing on constructive support. Through it all, she resisted the urge to lash out publicly, trusting that her best response would be living well and securing a stable future for her child. One late evening, after a particularly grueling day at work, Clara sank into her couch, phone in hand, scrolling through job emails and messages from acquaintances. She then stumbled upon an ad for a prenatal yoga class. Impulsively, she signed up, thinking it might help her cope with the stress. The first session felt awkward. She was surrounded by glowing pregnant women who seemed relaxed and at peace. Yet, as she practiced gentle poses, focusing on her breath and the life growing inside her, a calm she hadn't felt in months washed over her. Clara left that yoga studio, feeling not just physically looser, but mentally unburdened. She had discovered a healthy outlet for her anxiety, a sanctuary where she could reconnect with her body and emotions. That evening, she journaled about her aspirations for herself and her unborn daughter. She wrote about building a life filled with dignity, love, and resilience, one free from the shadows Michael had cast. Step by step, Clara was forging a path forward. Although the sting of betrayal still ached, and the humiliating memories still haunted her dreams, she refused to be defined by the hurt. She chose to be defined by her determination, her expanding skill set, her growing circle of supportive friends, and the immense love she already felt for the child she carried. Little did she know that fate had more twists in store that would ultimately lead her to an unexpected triumph, where karma would spin the wheel of justice in her favor. The fiancé's downfall, a house of cards. Collapses. Michael and Olivia wasted no time flaunting their romance. Pictures of lavish dinners, weekend getaways, and her sparkling engagement ring appeared on social media weekly. Publicly, they acted like a power couple destined for success. Privately, however, a far different story was unfolding. Mr. Harrison, Michael's father, couldn't ignore the scandal that erupted when Michael proposed to Olivia in front of Clara. Though furious, he kept most criticism behind closed doors, hoping to protect the family's reputation. Olivia aimed to capitalize on her new status, pushing for bold marketing moves at the family's car dealerships. She proposed glitzy ad campaigns and even hinted at opening a luxury showroom. Mr. Harrison, ever pragmatic, listened politely, but remained skeptical of her extravagant ideas. Olivia's drive for instant prestige collided with the realities of the business. She wanted massive budgets, but Mr. Harrison was wary of hemorrhaging funds. Despite this, Michael tried to appease her. He granted as many requests as he could, hoping to prove that leaving Clara was no mistake. At first, Olivia seemed pleased. She boasted about rebranding the company, confident her touch would transform it into an industry leader. However, the more she demanded, the more tension arose between Michael and his father. Mr. Harrison saw rising costs with few tangible returns. At board meetings, he questioned Olivia's plans, warning Michael that reckless spending could damage both their bottom line and investor confidence. Feeling torn, Michael defended Olivia in public while privately pleading with her to scale back. At home, their facade began to crack. Olivia criticized Michael whenever his work kept him away from her side. She accused him of valuing the business over her happiness, demanding more lavish gifts and constant reassurance. Heated arguments replaced the honeymoon phase. Michael, unaccustomed to such relentless conflict without Clara's calming influence, grew increasingly stressed. Without Clara's calming influence, he struggled to maintain any semblance of peace. Meanwhile, rumors circulated through Dallas's high society circles, suggesting that Olivia might be using Michael as a stepping stone for her own ambitions. Some speculated that her vision for the dealership's future was a cover for greed. Others whispered that Michael had rushed blindly into the relationship out of pride. Still, neither Michael nor Olivia would admit fault. Determined to validate their public image, they dove headlong into planning an extravagant wedding. Costs soared as Olivia insisted on designer attire, elaborate floral arrangements, and celebrity entertainment. Behind their glamorous Instagram posts, quarrels escalated. Mr. Harrison demanded financial transparency, while investors grew concerned about frivolous expenditures. Under pressure from all sides, Michael felt increasingly trapped. The lifestyle he thought he wanted had morphed into a constant scramble for damage control. Unbeknownst to them, these cracks in their perfect image were only the beginning. In chasing validation and ignoring the underlying strife, they set the stage for a downfall even more public than their engagement spectacle. By the time Clara neared her due date, a storm of problems had begun to converge on Michael and Olivia's meticulously crafted kingdom. It started with an internal audit of the family dealerships, initiated by Mr. Harrison, who suspected irregularities in the new marketing budgets. Sure enough, the auditors discovered overspending well beyond the company's typical allocations. Inflated invoices, unexplained purchases, and questionable vendor contracts pointed straight to Olivia's newly established marketing department. In some cases, funds had been diverted to personal expenses, luxury travel, high-end fashion shows, and lavish dinners that had little to do with actual business campaigns. When confronted, Olivia played innocent. She blamed miscommunication and clerical errors for the discrepancies. But the mounting evidence suggested deliberate misuse of company funds. Mr. Harrison was furious. "My son may be blind, but I'm not," he snarled in a tense meeting with Michael and Olivia. "This is my family's legacy, and I won't let it be destroyed by selfish whims." Michael, torn between defending his fiancée and saving face with his father, tried to argue that it was all a misunderstanding. But Mr. Harrison wasn't swayed. Legal counsel advised that Olivia's conduct put the company in a precarious position. The business risked losing credibility with investors if word got out that the future head of the dealership chain was involved in such financial fiascos. Then came the break-in scandal. Late one night, a brand new luxury car disappeared from one of the dealership showrooms. Security footage revealed a suspicious figure tampering with the locks. Initially, Michael assumed it was a random theft, until the footage showed the thief handing the stolen vehicle off to an unidentified accomplice, who took it straight to a private lot where Olivia's name was on a lease contract. The news rattled everyone. Though the details were murky, speculation soared about whether Olivia had orchestrated the theft for personal gain or as part of some convoluted scheme. Police launched an investigation, and while Olivia wasn't officially charged, the fiasco added another layer of reputational damage. Investors grew skittish. Meanwhile, the lavish wedding plans dissolved into chaos. Vendors began demanding deposits and final payments. The event planner threatened to cancel if she didn't receive overdue fees. In a frantic scramble, Michael emptied personal accounts and even tried to dip into the business reserves. When Mr. Harrison discovered this, he locked down company funds. Furious arguments between father and son followed, culminating in Mr. Harrison threatening to cut Michael out of the business altogether if he couldn't rein in his fiancée. For Olivia, the cracks in Michael's facade of endless wealth had finally become visible. She lashed out at him, accusing him of misrepresenting his financial stability. "You made me believe I'd have everything," she screamed during a heated argument overheard by staff at the dealership's main office. "How dare you embarrass me like this? I'm supposed to be your future wife, not some penny-pinching girlfriend." Michael, who had never been adept at managing conflict without Clara's calming influence, lost his temper as well. He spewed his own accusations, blaming Olivia for greed and for making impractical business decisions that threatened the entire family empire. Their fights became routine, the once luxurious condo filled with shouting matches and slammed doors. In a matter of months, their dream life had devolved into a nightmarish power struggle. Then, in a final twist of poetic justice, Olivia herself was caught in a compromising situation. An incriminating set of text messages with a man rumored to be a venture capitalist she'd been courting for new marketing contracts. Michael discovered them accidentally when he picked up her phone to read a text from a vendor. What he found instead were flirtatious exchanges, references to secret meetings, and insinuations that she was open to leaving Michael if the right opportunities presented themselves. Michael's world crashed. Rage and betrayal flooded him. He confronted Olivia, waving the phone in her face. "All this time I trusted you," he roared. "I defied my entire family, cast aside my own wife, and for what? So you could be setting up your next conquest?" Olivia scoffed, rolling her eyes. "Don't be naive, Michael. I wouldn't have to look elsewhere if you'd kept your promises. I'm not going to be tied down to a sinking ship." A violent argument ensued, culminating in Olivia storming out of the condo with her belongings. The wedding was off. Furious, Michael demanded she repay every cent she'd siphoned from the dealership's budgets, but Olivia laughed in his face, threatening to take him down with her if he went public with accusations of embezzlement. She hinted she had dirt on Michael's dealings, implying he wasn't squeaky clean either. The standoff left him shaken, uncertain how to proceed without further scandal. Broken, humiliated, and out hundreds of thousands of dollars, Michael found himself alone in the echoing condo that now felt more like a tomb of shattered illusions. His father's threats to disown him loomed. The business empire he once believed he would inherit without question was on precarious footing, all because he had allowed his arrogance and lust to dictate his life choices. In the emptiness of that condo, he finally understood the depth of his betrayal toward Clara. He recalled the night he proposed to Olivia in front of her, the look of devastation on Clara's face, and the unborn child he had dismissed so callously. Michael realized with sickening clarity that he had lost everything: his reputation, his father's trust, and the only woman who had ever genuinely cared for him. The house of cards he built with Olivia had collapsed, and he was left standing amid the wreckage, awaiting the final toll of karma's bell. Karma's embrace, a new dawn. As fate would have it, the final stroke of karma arrived at the same time Clara welcomed new life. She gave birth to a healthy baby girl named Hope, a name she chose for its meaning. Dawn, symbolizing new beginnings and hope after a long, dark night. The labor was intense, spanning almost 18 hours, but Clara endured each contraction with a fierce resolve. By her side, Mia offered unwavering support, holding her hand and wiping her forehead. When Hope finally let out her first cry, Clara burst into tears of gratitude and overwhelming love. In the days following Hope's birth, Clara felt a sense of peace and fulfillment she had not known in a long time. She brought her daughter home to a modest but comfortable apartment she had recently rented, closer to her new workplace. The space wasn't fancy by any stretch, but it was theirs, and it felt safe. A few colleagues from her tech startup job visited with gifts: diapers, baby clothes, and even a crowd-sourced hamper of essentials. For the first time since her marriage fell apart, Clara saw a future brimming with possibilities. Meanwhile, the divorce proceedings reached their final stage, thanks to Sarah Hayes's meticulous legal strategy. Combined with Michael's very public affair and the disastrous aftermath, Clara had the upper hand. Michael's attorneys tried one last round of intimidation tactics, questioning Clara's fitness as a parent, implying she was financially unstable. But Sarah dismantled each argument with evidence of Clara's stable employment and healthy living environment. Additionally, the courts took into account the emotional distress and the humiliating circumstances that led to the separation. By the time the final judgment was issued, Clara was granted full primary custody, with Michael mandated to provide substantial child support. Word reached Clara by way of mutual acquaintances that Michael's finances were in dire straits. Mr. Harrison had frozen his access to certain family funds, forcing Michael to rely on a modest salary and whatever personal savings he had left. He had moved out of the opulent condo and was living in a smaller apartment near the dealership. Olivia was long gone, and rumors suggested she had left Dallas entirely, possibly to avoid any legal fallout from the embezzlement allegations. Some whispered that the venture capitalist she'd been flirting with had cut ties as well, leaving her nowhere to land softly. One afternoon, a few weeks after finalizing the divorce, Clara was cradling hope when she heard a timid knock at her door. Peeking through the peephole, she was stunned to see Michael standing there, disheveled, shoulders slumped. Even though her pulse spiked in anger and weariness, she opened the door a few inches, keeping the chain latch in place. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice calm but firm. Michael exhaled, looking frail, as if the weight of the world hung on his shoulders. "I came to see my daughter," he said quietly, "and to talk to you." Clara hesitated. Legally, he had visitation rights, though they were structured through a formal schedule. She considered closing the door in his face, but a part of her remembered that Hope, someday, might want to know her father. And so, after a moment of deliberation, Clara unlatched the door and allowed him inside. The man who stepped into her living room bore little resemblance to the arrogant husband who had humiliated her. His once confident air was replaced by a hollow sadness. He looked around at the neatly organized space, the baby toys, and the warm sunlight streaming through the curtains. When he turned his gaze to Hope, asleep in Clara's arms, tears glistened in his eyes. "She's beautiful," he whispered, taking a seat when Clara gestured for him to do so. He waited, as if unsure whether Clara would allow him to hold the baby. After a few tense seconds, Clara carefully handed Hope over, her maternal instincts on high alert. Michael cradled his daughter gingerly, tears slipping down his cheeks as he stared at her tiny features. "I'm sorry," he finally choked out, looking up at Clara, "for everything, for how I treated you, for humiliating you, for not being there during the pregnancy." Clara stood at a slight distance, arms folded. Part of her had dreamed of this moment, of Michael coming to his senses and apologizing, but actually hearing the words felt surreal. "I can't change what happened," she said, softly, but without wavering. "And neither can you. Hope is my priority now." Michael nodded, his expression a mixture of regret and acceptance. He asked if there was any chance they could work things out, maybe start over. Clara felt a surge of heartbreak and anger. "We are far beyond that point," she replied, her voice steady. "The divorce is finalized. You have responsibilities now as a father, and I hope you'll honor them. But as for us, there's no going back." He didn't argue. Perhaps he was too broken to fight. He simply held Hope a moment longer, then gently handed her back. Before leaving, Michael asked if he could visit again, following the proper schedule. Clara nodded, giving him a short but polite goodbye. After he left, she stood by the window, holding Hope close. She peered down to see Michael trudging away, shoulders hunched, the vibrant swagger gone. The contrast between their two paths couldn't have been more stark. Clara felt sorrow for the father of her child, but also a triumph that she had rebuilt her life without him, and would continue to do so. In a sense, she had already won the battle he had so viciously provoked. She had found new strength, new love in her daughter, and new confidence in herself. And that was how Clara got the last laugh, not by stooping to Michael's level of cruelty, but by living a life that radiated genuine hope and possibility. The revenge, if it could be called that, lay in her peace of mind, and in the future she was carving out. She was thriving, raising Hope in a home filled with warmth and authenticity, while Michael faced the wreckage of the empire he had almost inherited, isolated from the illusions that once fueled his arrogance. Indeed, karma had played its hand, and Clara had emerged with the greatest gift of all, a beautiful baby girl, and a life that was truly her own. Sometimes the universe writes the best plot twists of all. Michael and Olivia tried to feed their egos while stomping on someone else's life, only to end up trapped by their own lies and destructive choices. Clara, on the other hand, faced her heartbreak with courage, rebuilt her life step by step, and discovered real happiness in motherhood and newfound independence. By the time Michael realized what he'd lost, the door to reconciliation was sealed shut. Stories like Clara's remind us that true victory isn't always about triumphing over an enemy. It's about finding the strength to heal and pursue a better future. If this powerful journey moved you, please take a moment to hit the like button, share the story with others, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps bring more real and inspiring tales of resilience and redemption to light. Thank you for watching.